What the crap? Didn't you say it was dead? Yeah, cause it was. What happened? Okay, so it looks like the rotation just started up, but we're not even in the warning. The warning is just to our west, so it should, and yeah, it probably will miss us to the west. Well, looks like you were right after all, huh? Yeah, but we should probably go downstairs just to be ready if anything crazy happens. But anything that would happen would not have anything to do with that storm. Ella and I picked up the computer and the iPad and we headed downstairs where my dad was already in alert position. Ella and I kind of slid onto the couch while Dad gathered the information. We sat there awkwardly watching Dad for a while when he sighed in relief in the news that the storm was going to stay to the west. Seeing Dad relieved made Ella and I sigh in our own relief. So we're good now. Thank goodness. Those sirens scared me to death. Dad went on to his office and me and Ella stayed in the living room and watched the television. We started to get completely relaxed once again, but the meteorologist said some words that would put the fear back into our stomachs. Looks like the thing is actually starting to take a sharp turn to the right. Dad heard and walked into the room. The meteorologist played out the radar into motion, and sure enough, the turn was happening. So usually when a storm takes a sharp sudden turn like that, it means that the storm has gotten a lot stronger, and it means that the rotation in that storm is also tightened up and strengthened, which also meant that there was probably a tornado on the ground. The sirens rang again. Dad traced the future track of the storm with his finger on the television screen, and sure enough, it tracked right into his family's farm. If you remember from the first How I Became a Weather Geek, if a tornado hits the farm, it will eventually hit us. It sure looked like that was exactly what was going to happen. Ella, you should probably go home now. Yeah, when you get there, Ella, tell your parents that they need to come to our new house as soon as possible. I knew exactly where we were going to go for shelter. At the time, we were moving downtown, and the house that we were moving into had a built-in quote-unquote EF5-proof tornado shelter. I liked the idea of being in the shelter, but I didn't like the idea of getting there. To get there, we would have to drive through the storm, literally drive deeper into it, and then run through the death storm into the house and then into the shelter. That was exactly our plan. Ella ran home and my entire family got in the car and we drove off. I remember looking out the window and seeing the unreal dark clouds. We got to the intersection where the light was red. It wasn't pouring down rain just yet, but it was really breezy and the outside had a weird shade to it. I looked up into the sky and saw the green that my dad had told me about from 3 years prior. I knew what that meant. There was a tornado on the ground. My thought was confirmed when the radio sounded off in the car.
At 5:13 p.m. Central Daylight Time, Doppler radar and storm spotters were tracking a large and extremely dangerous tornado near. Doppler radar showed this tornado moving east-northeast at 50 miles per hour. This is a tornado emergency.
I was horrified. I don't even know if that word can describe my feeling at that moment. We sped off and arrived at the house just as the rain began to shoot down onto the ground. We dashed in, closed the door, and headed for the shelter. Dad stayed out in what would be the living room to wait for Ella's family, and they came in very shortly after we came in. They ran into the shelter, turned on the lights, and slammed the door shut. You could hear the wind and hail hitting the side of the house. It was super eerie. It felt so dark even though it was so bright, if that makes sense. Cellular data was basically out, but if you waited long enough, you could get a radar image, so that's exactly what I did. As the wind increased, the radar image showed the circulation right over us. I panicked for a second and then began accepting that everything I knew in my town would probably be destroyed when we got out the shelter. There was still a debris signature, so I thought to myself, it's on the ground. It is destroying my hometown. Crap. The rain slowed down and it sounded like we were good to come out. I braced myself and opened the door. The house was fine, but I had no idea what it was like outside. It was finally dark thanks to the thick clouds and the sunset happening at the same time. The first thing my dad did was call my grandma, which was at the farm. She answered and she said the family that she was with was fine, but she didn't know about the outside. That night, 3 more supercells would cast down possible tornadoes on us, and we would not have any chances to leave the house until about 10 o'clock. My downtown was fine, and so was the neighborhood that my new house was in. We had no idea about what had happened just a mile or so away from the farm. There was an EF3 tornado that had hit, and really, it destroyed every single house that was impacted by it at all. I did not know this that night, and really, I'm glad I didn't. The nerves from the whole day had kind of all built up on me, and I was really antsy laying down and getting ready to sleep that night. I remember deciding that night that I was probably never going to stop being a weather geek, no matter what people say. Weather just seemed right for me. The next day, we had another threat, but nothing happened. Before the threat began, my parents went out to look at the damage, and apparently it was pretty bad. Houses were destroyed, power lines were everywhere, trees were down, it was crazy. The cold front to end the whole event went through the night of April 29th, 2014, and I remember I was relieved. I was ready for the whole event to die. Like April 27th, 2011, this day messed me up for a hot second too, though I knew this time what I needed to do with the fear. I was going to turn this fear into an even stronger version of my previous interest, which I did. And that is how I became a weather geek.
This is an extremely dangerous tornado with complete devastation likely. You could be killed, if not underground, or in a tornado shelter. Do not delay. Seek shelter now. If no underground shelter is available, seek shelter in an interior room of the lowest level of the structure, or if time allows, consider moving to an underground shelter elsewhere. Mobile homes and outbuildings will offer no shelter from this tornado. Repeating, a tornado warning has been issued until 5:45 p.m. Central Daylight Time for the following counties in Alabama: